You're about to witness how the ultimate old school football legend took a stand against the modern NFL's obsession with clicks, clout, and chaos. We're talking about two-time Super Bowl winning coach Bruce Arians, who, after seeing the entire internet lose its mind over a third-string quarterback, decided enough was enough. He didn't just critique the situation, he launched a verbal missile at the heart of the NFL's hype machine, going straight for the jugular of everyone dragging Shedeur Sanders' name through the mud for views. This wasn't a comment, it was a full-blown football sermon, a masterclass in calling out the absolute circus the league has become. You had legends clutching their clipboards, terrified and confused, while an army of college football fans, now self-appointed scouts, armed with hot takes and Twitter fingers, went wild. And right there, in the eye of the digital hurricane, was Shedeur himself, sipping something cool, smirking like he was watching a rerun of his own highlight reel, fully aware of the chaos he inspires just by existing. You absolutely have to see how Arians took this tide wave of slander and flipped it into a straight-up coaching clinic, turning an internet roast into an unforgettable lecture on what real leadership, player protection, and common sense look like in an age where none of it seems to exist anymore. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss a single word of this. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smashing that button helps the channel more than you can possibly imagine. Because what started as a typical Monday turned into pure, unadulterated, beautiful madness. It was one of those classic NFL meltdown Mondays. A day where logic packed its bags, left a note on the counter, and completely abandoned the building. Forget about game stats. Forget about scoreboards. Forget about actual on-field performance. The only headline that anyone, and I mean anyone, cared about was Shedeur Sanders, a third-string quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, a man who hadn't even taken a meaningful regular season snap, somehow stealing the spotlight from half the league's franchise starters. It was bizarre, it was unprecedented, and it was the perfect storm of hype, legacy, and controversy. Then, emerging from the mist like a football oracle tired of the world's foolishness, came Bruce Arians. Picture this, a man with more Super Bowl rings than patience, probably relaxing on his golf cart, squinting at the blaring headlines on his phone. You can almost hear him muttering, "Why is the third quarterback getting interviewed?" He had nothing to do with the game. He didn't just think it, he said it out loud into a microphone, and in that instant, the sports world, already teetering on the edge, collectively lost its mind all over again. Talk shows that should have been meticulously breaking down the Cleveland Browns' struggling offensive line, or Dylan Gabriel's transition into the starting role, were suddenly dedicating entire segments to analyzing Sanders' facial expressions during press conferences. It was forensic psychology for football fans. Did that smirk mean he's confident or arrogant? Was that glance at the ceiling a sign of disrespect or deep strategic thought? ESPN, in a moment of sheer content-driven genius, practically turned a 2-second clip of him tying his shoes on the sideline into a feature-length documentary about leadership, focus, and the pressures of being a young phenom. No, seriously, you couldn't escape it. The man's every breath was being analyzed, scrutinized, and monetized for engagement. This is the chaotic world that Bruce Arians stepped into, and when he started swinging, he wasn't really aiming at Shedeur's game, his talent, or even his personality. He was taking a sledgehammer to the entire NFL media machine, calling out the ridiculous spectacle that has transformed the gridiron into a high-stakes reality television show. The question he posed was simple, but devastatingly effective. Why are we making him available? It wasn't a shot at Shedeur, it was a direct hit on the system that was setting him up. "Whoever's running their media relations should turn that down," he growled. "There's no sense to have him available." He was pointing the finger not at the player, but at the architects of the chaos, the PR teams, the media outlets, the entire ecosystem that thrives on turning young athletes into content creators before they've even proven themselves as consistent performers. This entire firestorm had been simmering for weeks, but it reached its boiling point over Shedeur's now infamous mime interview. With cameras shoved in his face day after day, reporters asking the same recycled questions, and microphones surrounding him like a swarm of angry bees, Shedeur decided to flip the script. Instead of giving the same boring cliche answers, or worse, saying something that could be twisted into a negative headline, he had fun with it. He gestured, he mimed, he played the role of a silent movie star in a football helmet. They called it unprofessional, they called it disrespectful, they called it a distraction. But let's be brutally honest for a second, not every single interview with a third-string quarterback needs to be a hard-hitting primetime expose. Sometimes it can just be mime time. Shedeur wasn't mocking the media, he was outsmarting them. He was showing everyone that in the face of relentless pressure, you can still maintain your composure, keep your personality, and refuse to be a pawn in their game of clickbait. He was playing chess while they were all playing checkers, and it was driving them insane. At this point in the NFL season, talking about Shedeur Sanders isn't just an option, it's practically a mandatory subject in the sports curriculum. You could have the Super Bowl, a massive celebrity scandal, and a full-blown alien invasion happening all at the same time, and somehow some analyst would still lean into the camera and ask, yeah, but what are Shedeur's thoughts on the extraterrestrial defensive formations? That's how deeply entrenched he is in the narrative. So of course it was only a matter of time before Bruce Arians, a man who looks like he survives on a steady diet of black coffee, pure grit, and straight up annoyance with modern nonsense, decided he'd had enough of this NFL soap opera. The three-time Super Bowl champion didn't just add his 2 cents to the conversation, he came in swinging a financial takeover ready to bankrupt the entire hype industry. It was a spectacular display of pure veteran rage mixed with that classic unfiltered Arians fire, and the result was a masterclass in calling out absurdity. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating, where the story takes a twist that nobody saw coming. Bruce didn't even come for Shedeur directly, not at all. He didn't criticize his talent, question his work ethic, or mock his sideline antics. Instead, he went after everyone else. He aimed his cannons at the media who were fanning the flames, the hype train that had gone completely off the rails, and most pointedly the Cleveland Browns' own PR crew, who he saw as the ringmasters of this entire circus. He essentially called out the entire ecosystem that had conspired to turn a third-string quarterback into a trending topic every single day of the week. Think about the absurdity of it. Every throw in practice, every smirk on the sideline, every single blink Shedeur makes gets treated like he's running for political office. The man puts on a headset to listen to the offensive coordinator on the bench, and suddenly Twitter explodes with analysts acting like he's decoding Cold War-era state secrets. He's locked in. They scream, he's sending a message. Yeah, he's probably sending a message that says, can someone please get me an offensive line that can block for more than 2 seconds so the starter doesn't get hurt? But this isn't about football anymore, not even close. It has morphed into a bizarre vortex of celebrity, clout, and chaos, all rolled into one gigantic, never-ending meme storm. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just playing football, he's living rent-free inside the internet's collective imagination. Every breath he takes, every sideline glance gets meticulously dissected and turned into a full-blown episode of Keeping Up with the Quarterbacks. And Bruce Arians, oh, he's not tuning in for the reruns. He is done watching this hype circus parade around like it's the main event. When reporters finally cornered him and asked for his take on the situation, Arians didn't even flinch. There was no sugarcoating, no PR-approved filter, no diplomatic nonsense. He spoke like a man who is fundamentally allergic to foolishness and has grown tired of babysitting headlines. He essentially said, look, when you're third string, you don't need to be in front of cameras. Boom, straight from the coach's mouth. No polish, no spin, just pure unadulterated truth wrapped in a thick layer of sarcasm and cigar smoke. You need to be in front of the playbook, not the cameras. That was the core of his message, and you could tell he meant every single syllable. This is football, not a fame camp. He barked, metaphorically speaking. You don't get press conferences for perfecting the art of the water bottle handoff. And honestly, he's not wrong. He's not even a little bit wrong. This is the same man who coached Tom Brady, one of the most famous athletes on the planet. He's run locker rooms filled with legendary egos and has navigated media storms that would make the current Cleveland circus look like a gentle spring sprinkle. He knows what it takes to build a winning culture, and in his book, that culture is built in the film room and on the practice field, not in front of a green screen for a viral clip. As you can imagine, the second Bruce Arians' fiery comments hit the airwaves, the internet did what the internet does best. It exploded. The digital world split right down the middle, creating a seismic fault line between two warring factions. Half of the timeline instantly transformed into self-proclaimed PR experts and brand strategists, passionately defending Shedeur's inalienable right to build his personal brand. The other half morphed into an army of amateur psychologists, meticulously analyzing his confidence levels, his body language, and his supposed arrogance like it was a live-streamed group therapy session. On one side, fans were shouting, he's just branding himself. It's the new era. Let the kid cook. They argued that Shedeur's ability to command attention was a skill in itself, a testament to his marketability, and a sign of the changing landscape of professional sports. They saw Arians as a dinosaur, a relic from a bygone era who just didn't understand the modern athlete's need to leverage their platform. On the other side, the traditionalists were barking back. Focus on football, not on fame. Earn your stripes before you demand the spotlight. They saw Shedeur's media presence as a distraction, a sign of misplaced priorities that could poison the locker room and undermine the team-first mentality that coaches like Arians hold sacred. And somewhere in the quiet middle of that raging digital inferno, Bruce Arians was probably leaning back in his chair, sipping something strong and smooth, and genuinely wondering how the sport he dedicated his life to had devolved into this chaotic circus. But his rant wasn't just the ramblings of a grumpy old coach. Beneath all the jokes and caffeine-fueled critiques, he was pointing at a much bigger, more insidious problem. When a young player becomes too famous too fast, the pressure cooker starts to hiss and rattle, threatening to explode before the meal is even cooked. Arians isn't mad at Shedeur for having charisma or marketability. The kid was practically born with it. Bruce is calling out the entire system, the media, the league, and even the teams themselves that now treat social media engagement like it's game film. They value clicks over completions and trends over touchdowns. This brings us to a darker, more conspiratorial corner of the internet, a theory that's been whispered in forums and shouted on podcasts. The theory is this: the NFL as an institution flat out wants Shedeur Sanders to fail. Now, before you dismiss it, listen to the argument. You have a guy who absolutely balled out in college. He did his thing, put up huge numbers, and became a cultural phenomenon at both Jackson State and Colorado. Then you throw him into the back of the draft. Okay, fine. Maybe there were questions about the level of competition. He gets to Cleveland, has a pretty solid preseason, showing flashes of the talent everyone knows he has. Meanwhile, the starting quarterback situation is, to put it mildly, a mess. The team is struggling, starting the season in a deep hole at 0-3, so why not throw the kid in? Why not see what you've got? The conspiracy theorists believe there are calls being made behind the scenes. They argue that the powers that be don't like what Shedeur Sanders represents. He's confident, he's unapologetically himself, and he comes from a legacy that commands attention outside the league's traditional structures. So, you're telling me that the kid who's supposed to be the #1 pick can't handle one sophisticated defense? What's he going to do in the NFL? They see something threatening in Shedeur's swagger, in his refusal to bow down and be the quiet, grateful rookie they think he should be. He represents a new kind of power for athletes, one that isn't entirely controlled by the league, and that scares them. So, while Cleveland's media department probably thought they were executing a brilliant marketing strategy, let's show more Shedeur, let's keep him visible and build the hype. Bruce Arians is looking on from a distance, yelling at his television. Visible for what? For a portfolio of practice squad glamour shots. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He saw a young player being fed to the algorithm, not nurtured for the field. The wild part is that Shedeur didn't even ask for this three-ring circus. He's just existing, but his name alone has become a content generating engine. The dude could be quietly tying his cleats in the locker room, and someone would inevitably upload the footage with dramatic slow motion music and a caption like Shedeur Sanders, a study in preparation, the laser focus of a future champion. It's utterly ridiculous, but it's also the exact kind of digital chaos that now defines, for better or for worse, the modern National Football League. Now, let's zoom out from the digital battlefield for a moment, because in the midst of all this drama, there's an actual football game to be played. And it's not just any game. The Cleveland Browns have a massive high-stakes matchup looming against the Minnesota Vikings, and they're playing it across the pond in London. This is a huge stage, an international audience, a chance for the team to salvage its season and prove its worth. And yet, what is the single biggest storyline dominating the headlines in the week leading up to the game? Is it the playbook, the defensive matchups, the strategic adjustments needed to stop the Vikings offense? Nope, of course not. The biggest storyline is about who the Cleveland Browns are allowing to speak in front of a microphone. Forget about film sessions, forget about game strategy. This has officially turned into the public relations bowl. You could not script this level of off-the-field drama if you hired the best writers in Hollywood. The Browns are literally crossing an ocean to try and prove they can win a football game. And the media is collectively saying, that's nice, but quick. Zoom in. Is Shedeur smiling on the sideline? Does his body language suggest he's engaged with the game plan? The man is third on the depth chart, but consistently first in the search results. It is certifiably insane. At this point, they might as well list him on the official team roster as QB3, trending #1. This is precisely why Bruce Arians' frustration makes perfect logical sense. Football is no longer just a sport. It has become a relentless 24/7 content machine, and sitting right in the metallic, churning gears of that machine, whether he likes it or not, is Shedeur Sanders. He's not there because he begged for the spotlight. He's there because he sells. That is the cold, hard, uncomfortable truth that Bruce is pointing at. The NFL doesn't just run on touchdowns and field goals anymore. It runs on clicks, clips, and controversy. And Shedeur, with his famous last name, his undeniable charisma, and his polarizing presence, is the human equivalent of rocket fuel for that machine. But let's be fair here. Shedeur didn't just stumble into this position by accident. The man has the swagger, the name, and a backstory that practically writes itself. He is Deion Sanders' son. That fact alone guarantees that cameras will follow him from the moment he steps off the team bus to the moment he leaves the stadium. It's like he was born with a microphone already clipped to his jersey. Even if he were to take a vow of silence and decide to not speak to the media for the next calendar year, someone would still post a clip of him staring into space with a title like "Shedeur's Profound Silence Speaks Volumes About the State of the Browns." The problem, as Arians sees it, lies within the organization itself, the locker room, and more specifically the PR team with the Browns. Why is a third-string quarterback being trotted out for interviews week after week? Why? There are over 50 other players on that roster. Go into the quarterback room and talk to the starter, Dylan Gabriel, or the veteran backup, Joe Flacco. Go to the training room and interview the star defensive end. Go somewhere, anywhere else. The third-string QB is not supposed to be the topic of the week, but by continually making him available, the team is actively making it about him, whether they intend to or not. Somebody inside that organization needs to protect their young asset. The fact that they're carrying 4 quarterbacks on the roster shows they feel good about Shedeur's potential, so why not shield him? A veteran player, or more appropriately, the PR staff, needs to step in. They should be the gatekeepers, the ones telling the media, no, you can't talk to him today. He's focused on his development. Instead, they seem to be throwing him to the wolves, perhaps chasing the fleeting high of social media engagement. This is where Bruce Arians' old school mentality hits a nerve, because deep down, he's absolutely right. He's not just ranting for the sake of it. He's exposing a fundamental failure of the modern sports media landscape. They aren't protecting these young players anymore. They are feeding them to the algorithm. Here is where the entire saga transcends from mere sports drama into a work of beautiful poetic irony. The more Bruce Arians complained about Shedeur Sanders' overexposure, the more media exposure Shedeur got. You absolutely cannot script irony this good. It's the NFL's version of a feedback loop, a perfect cycle of unintended consequences. The very act of trying to stop the media storm only made the thunder and lightning that much louder. The second Arians' comments went public, every sports outlet from the behemoth ESPN down to the smallest fan-run podcast was blasting out headlines like Bruce Arians calls out Shedeur Sanders coverage and NFL legend slams Browns PR over rookie QB. Congratulations, coach. You just single-handedly gave the man another full week of trending time on every social media platform known to man. It's truly poetic. Bruce tried to pull the emergency brake on the hype machine, and in doing so, he accidentally stomped on the turbo boost button, launching it into hyperspace. You can just picture the scene inside the Cleveland Browns media department. There's a group chat on Slack that's probably titled something like Code Red, Bruce Spoke. One person is frantically typing, should we pull all of Shedeur's scheduled interviews for the week? Another immediately replies, it's too late. The Arians clip is already viral on TikTok. And then a third person, likely the head of digital engagement, mutters under their breath, well, at least we're getting great numbers. And that right there is the modern NFL summed up in one tragicomic sentence. An environment where engagement often matters more than execution. It's no longer about who wins the game on Sunday. It's about who wins the conversation on Monday. And the fans, oh, the fans, they are right there in the thick of it, pouring gasoline on the fire without even realizing they're holding the can. They are the engine of this chaos. You have the die-hard defenders, the Shedeur loyalists who treat any form of criticism against him as a deeply personal attack. They are ready to wage all-out digital warfare, throwing virtual punches and writing scathing manifestos in the comments section to protect their chosen quarterback. On the other side, you have the haters, the skeptics who are just waiting in the shadows, lurking in the digital weeds, itching for the moment he slips up so they can triumphantly type, I told you so. He's all hype, no substance. Both sides in their passionate defense or critique are unknowingly feeding the very same machine they swear they despise. It's a genius and utterly ridiculous cycle all at once. Shedeur Sanders is no longer just a quarterback. He has ascended to the level of a cultural event. He's the physical embodiment of what happens when old school football collides head on with new school TikTok energy, and the resulting explosion goes viral before the kickoff has even happened. His name alone is a cheat code for driving engagement charts through the roof. Meanwhile, you have Bruce Arians, the grizzled veteran, a guy who still fundamentally believes in the sanctity of hard work, locker room discipline, and the simple pleasure of a cold post-practice beer. You feel like he's watching all of this unfold and just thinking to himself, what in the hell happened to football? He has become the voice of that old school frustration, yelling into a brand new digital echo chamber that's far too busy refreshing its timeline to even hear him properly. And yet, that's the crazy, undeniable beauty of it all. The old meets the new, the serious clashes with the absurd, the grind-it-out mentality is pitted against the go-viral mentality, and somewhere in the middle of this grand collision, the internet just sits back with a giant bowl of popcorn and enjoys the show. Say what you want about this madness, but you cannot deny one thing. It is never, ever boring. In a weirdly poetic way, Bruce Arians and Shedeur Sanders have become two sides of the very same rapidly spinning coin. One represents the grind, the discipline, the earn your stripes philosophy of a bygone era. The other represents the spotlight, the clicks, the brand, the new generation that figured out how to turn attention itself into a form of currency. The NFL didn't just evolve, it was completely flipped on its head. And now, every single time those two worlds collide, the internet gets another must-see episode to binge-watch like it's their favorite reality series. As the Browns finish packing their gear and board the long flight to London, one thing is absolutely guaranteed. It won't matter who actually throws the most touchdowns or which team wins the game. The headlines on Monday morning will inevitably read something like, Shedeur Sanders seen boarding plane, looks intensely focused, boom, instantly viral, millions of views generated from a single photograph of a man walking up a flight of stairs.